But what I wanted to do for this video was to go into what I've noticed from spending the last month following a carnivore way of eating. Before I go there, before I explain my benefits, I would just like to recap on why it is that it might be beneficial for me. But before I even do that, please subscribe to my video, share it, like it, to give me the encouragement to keep going, really. So if you could do that, that would be brilliant. Thank you. So a few months ago, I was lucky enough to have a consultation with a private doctor who's very well respected in the patient community in terms of chronic fatigue, long COVID, and things like that. One of the things that she recommends is to follow a ketogenic way of eating, which is what I've been doing for several months. And that was not really a surprise because I'd already read into the benefits of following that way of eating actually years ago, but never got around to actually doing it for myself. What was a surprise was that I contacted her on an update and was telling her how I was getting on. And I was saying that overall things were seeming to improve, but I was still experiencing a lot of problems with my digestion and my bowels. This might be a good point to skip if you don't like too much detail. But basically, I was either really constipated or I was the other way and having to go several times a day with very loose motions. And that has been my default bowel operation for probably near on 20 years. I've had investigations at one stage. My stomach was really bloating badly. And I was really cycling for a week of feeling that I had constipation and then a week of really bad diarrhea. So I mentioned this to her, and I mentioned this long-term problem and said that hadn't really improved on the ketogenic diet. And much to my, to be honest, surprise, she came back with try carnivore. Now, my initial thoughts about carnivore were it was an excuse for people that love meat to eat lots of meat. And I'm not a great meat lover, to be honest. The thought of eating nothing but meat didn't fill me with joy. So I did what I tend to do when faced with an opinion that's different from mine. I started researching it, and I found opinions like this.
But there was a study done out of Harvard that found that when more than 2,000 carnivore dieters were surveyed, 97% of them resolved their IBS issues. That's more than any kind of pharmaceutical drug will ever help. 97% of them, just by changing their diet, improve their digestive issues. Now, some plant food
about how a diet, particularly a meat-based diet, has been able to and can help fix many of these common gut symptoms. And so the first one is IBS, or Irritable Bowel Syndrome. I think it should be renamed "You're eating the wrong damn food," quite honestly. I mean, this is an extremely common diagnosis. Something like 15% of Americans are diagnosed with this, maybe some as high as 20, and probably other people have it that have not yet been diagnosed with. Again, IBS, for lack of a better term, is you're eating the wrong damn food. We should just rename it that, call it what it is. And that's really what it is. And we have all these sort of different protocols and treatments and medications.
Okay, so now we're down to the colon. And
this is where most people say their problem.
And so let's talk about irritable bowel syndrome, irritable bowel disease, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease, right? Most people's doctor or healthcare provider will say, well, it's genetic or it's autoimmune or we don't know what's causing it. But there's a chink in their armor of knowledge that I know and she knows and you may know, but if you don't know, I'm about to tell you. Yeah, there is a component of autoimmunity, no doubt. There is probably a tiny component of genetics in there, no doubt. 1%, maybe 2%. But the 95% of the problem is caused by the foods you eat. If you eliminate the foods that are irritating your colon, all your symptoms will go away, whether they're diarrhea predominant symptoms or constipation predominant symptoms. They just get better and go away by magic. As if by magic.
Right.
But it's not magic. Basically, you've removed the offending toxin, and your colon's actually able to heal and calm down, and then all your symptoms go away. So it's vital, and this is where the carnivore diet comes in. So if you went keto and lots of things are better, but you're still having IBS or IBD or UC or Crohn's symptoms, you need to try from 30 days to 90 days of a carnivore diet.
Especially for IBD, IBS. I mean, that stuff just goes away when you stop eating plants. They just go away, and they don't come back unless you start eating that crap again, because like that stuff's poisoning you, And so if you start eating poison again, you're going to get poisoned again.
So these are all, medically trained, or these are medically trained people. These are people with a lot of experience in eating the carnivore way, saying that it's good for potentially a lot of my symptoms. So I went on it. The first couple of days in particular were really tough. I was eating minced beef. Now, minced beef, I don't mind if it's in a tomato sauce or coconut cream or with flavorings and a few vegetables, which I would have normally had on a ketogenic diet and enjoy. But simple minced beef on its own was hard going. I was adding some butter, so it was quite a fatty meal. It felt fatty. My mouth ended up, kind of fatty after it. Not enjoying it. Got to the end of the first day just craving something that wasn't minced beef. And my normal snack would be a piece of chocolate or a piece of dark chocolate, that is, on a ketogenic diet. I make my own. It's got virtually no sugar in it at all. It's very close to being 100% chocolate with no ultra processed ingredients, etc. Or my other favourite snack was half a tin of coconut cream with some things like blueberries, very low sugar. I could eat that and stay in ketosis, and I would enjoy that. And at the end of the first day, I was really craving some coconut cream, a couple of berries. It was really difficult opening the fridge. The rest of my family are eating normally. Opening the fridge, seeing things like a blueberry or a raspberry or a strawberry. Normally I could have had one, and I'm opening the door, not being able to have one. I would normally also have a tomato. Couldn't eat a tomato. So the first day was really difficult. The second day, I was by the time the evening came, I was eating pretty much the same thing. Feeling I had a real slump in energy as well, which surprised me, because the fact that I had been in ketosis for probably about 6 months prior, I thought that I would be fully fat adapted and getting all my energy from fat quite happily. But the interesting thing was that swapping to carnivore only, I did have a slump. Now, I wasn't paying any real attention to how much fat I was having or how much protein I was having. So it is possible that maybe I was having too little fat. Although Tuesday evening of the first day, I also ended up with really bad diarrhea, which is something that can be for various reasons. Some people say sometimes it's your body getting rid of toxins. Some people say it's too much rendered fat, which is liquid fat. And from my perspective, I thought it was probably too much liquid fat. I'd been adding chunks of butter to my minced beef, which was melting. So it was fairly high in liquid fat. So by the end of Tuesday night, I was feeling like giving up, if I'm honest. It was like, oh, this is horrible. I don't like this at all. And then I woke up the third morning, and I noticed my body felt calm. It's a really difficult thing for me to explain and to put in words. I wasn't really aware previously of waking up feeling anything other than calm. But the fact was, I woke up and I just thought, oh, my body feels calm. So that encouraged me to like, oh, well, okay, I've still got some meat left. I'll have another meal of meat. Through the day, I noticed also that for the 4 weeks prior to trying the carnivore diet, I had a pressure in this side of my nose that was kind of all the way up here. And this side of my nose seemed swollen shut. It wasn't generating mucus as such. It just seemed to be swollen shut. This is something in the past. I've always suffered from breathing difficulties up this side of my nose. The doctors have said, oh yeah, your sinus passages are inflamed. They give steroids. The steroids take the inflammation away. As soon as you stop the steroids, the inflammation comes back. So it's something I've kind of just lived with. And for 4 weeks prior to going carnivore, which coincided with some emotional distress, which triggered a lot of trauma that I've experienced in the last 8 or 9 years, I got this huge pressure in this side of my nose. And what I realized on the 3rd day of being carnivore, what I realized was that I was actually breathing through this side of my nose and I had absolutely no pressure whatsoever. So that was a little bit of motivation to stick with it. I was looking online and finding people like a channel called the Steak and Butter Girl, who talks about things like carnivore desserts, and I was looking at those thinking maybe I could make those. If I could make those over the weekend, they were using things like egg and cream cheese, which is kind of carnivore-ish. I thought, yeah, I can last to the weekend. So I kept going and was noticing various improvements in my symptoms. And then it was probably about the end of the first week where I actually had a bowel motion that was normal. It was the first normal bowel motion that I'd had since I can't remember, literally since possibly going back, at least 10 years. So that was really interesting for me, and that was a real positive. The constant diarrhea that I had been having, it worried me that I wasn't absorbing nutrients and things as much as I could be. It's obviously just not a healthy bowel movement, so you kind of end up with, well, why is it not healthy? What's going on there? So that was a real positive moment. Positive poo, you might like to say, a bit too much information. But that has encouraged me to keep going. And what I've noticed is that strict carnivore is meat and water. I was recommended to do meat with coffee in between meals for at least 2 weeks. I probably did come off of that a little bit early and introduce things like eggs and the cream cheese, which I normally hesitate about dairy. And it's interesting that in doing that, I have noticed that coincides with, when I'm eating that, coincides with this side of my nostril blocking up again. And potentially some flare-ups in other symptoms as well. My bowels have remained good, which is positive. One of my first thoughts with carnivore was, will I get constipation? And I did lots of research into that. It's possibly the reason why I overdid the fat initially, because people said as long as you're eating fat, you'll be okay. But it's interesting that my symptoms, wouldn't say my energy is necessarily improved a great deal, but there's a lot of other random symptoms that have improved. So I've been carnivore now for a month. It's the improvements I've seen have motivated me to keep going. My challenge is staying off of dairy and one of the reasons for that is because people say that dairy is inflammatory if you have got any chronic inflammation. Sorry, my dog's barking there. We'll just let my dog finish barking. So just to wrap up then, really, after a month of eating carnivore diet, I am certainly impressed with the improvements that I'm noticing. I'd certainly recommend it to anyone with any chronic health conditions, and I would recommend that you start on just ruminant meat and potentially coffee in between your meals, because coffee will absorb your nutrients if you eat it at the same time. So I would certainly recommend that, and then to slowly reintroduce some different things as you go. I would certainly be cautious about adding too much dairy. Butter is okay, but dairy protein, a lot of experts feel that if you've got any kind of condition that involves inflammation, of which most do, sort of chronic low-level inflammation, that dairy will actually aggravate that and make that worse. And certainly in the first month, that's kind of what I'm noticing. If I've had, so I was making myself little cheesecakes, which were essentially egg and cream cheese, nothing else. And if I was hungry and ended up with a couple of those a day, I would then end up with more symptoms afterwards the following day. So I hope you find that useful. Please subscribe, please share, please like the video, and I will be bringing you more updates soon.